Hey everybody, welcome to EIS Live. I'm so happy I just found out we're actually on. I get so paranoid that we're not going to be on and I'm going to be talking to nobody. I've done that so many times before, but it looks like we're actually live. So yeah, welcome back. Sorry we missed last week, but we're back for part 2 today with my friend Kayla. But as always, to kind of lead in before we get started, I just want to let everybody know what we are as far as EIS is concerned. And most of you, since you're subscribed to the app, you pretty much probably clearly know who EIS is and what we do. But I always like to put that out there for those who just might not know. So what we really are is a pastoral counseling, coaching, and mentoring entity that really focuses a lot more on people becoming more of their authentic selves than kind of fixing you up or dealing with issues and trying to just put band-aids on. We really want to help people at the core of who they are. Also, and the only way to discover your why is to know your purpose. And what's your initial purpose? Your purpose is to understand and know who you are authentically. So that's the avenue that we would take people down in terms of helping people. So we employ a tested process to help people to move into what is essentially a new paradigm or a new way of living. And that promotes a lifestyle change that brings about this genuine life transformation that we're talking about. Again, not just to put band-aids on and try to just get through to the other side of something. That'll happen also, but that's not enough. We don't want to just get through things in life and not have the desired change happen as we keep moving forward. So we want to help people move beyond what I call tolerable recovery and coping and hoping and things like that we really get used to doing because we just don't know how to do anything differently. And this applies to every area of life, all of our relationships with ourselves, first off, with God, our significant others, marriages, businesses, virtually every area of life is affected because we're living that life. So that's what we basically do through the process. And our live broadcasts really are here to present actual testimonies of people who have entered the process and have experienced degrees of life transformation as a result and have learned how to change their life paradigms to one that keeps them in a forward movement by employing the tools, the disciplines, and so on as a new way to live. It's a lifestyle change. So we feature our own team members, authors, and other guests who have lent value into our community, and certainly people who have gone through the process as we're doing today to help us to understand what this looks like in real time for real people who are actually enjoying this life transforming process that you get into that lasts for the rest of your life, really. So, and then finally, we want to invite you to ask questions during our interview. We're still poking around and trying to learn how to respond to those. But on the app, you can ask those questions. I believe Vanessa is going to be able to field those for us. And I'm going to let her come on right now. Hey, Ness.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good. Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be back. Feels like forever.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got the whole new platform going on here and all of that. So still trying to work the bugs out. So I think, as I said, there's a way for people to put their comments and their questions in.
Yes, I'm trying to pull it up on my end. So as soon as I have it, I will be the one fielding those, and we can definitely have time to ask Kayla whatever questions come in. But I will let you know once I have that up on my end.
Awesome. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that you are the media czar when it comes to EIS. And we really appreciate your help all the time and doing that behind the scenes tech support. And you're doing more all the time. So thanks so much.
It is my honor. Thank you for allowing me to do so.
All righty. So I am excited today to introduce our guest, who is Kayla McKenna. She's a vital part of the CYL team, of course, in a lot of different ways. I actually asked her earlier, like, what's your role? And like, what do you do over there? You know, and as most of us would probably answer, there's just so many of those roles and different hats that we wear. So, but she is a vital part of that. So I'm sure most people are familiar with her sanguine self. So bring Kayla on. Hey, welcome back.
Hey guys, what's going on? So happy to be here. You made me laugh right away.
Good. I hope you don't mind me like, characterizing you as that sanguine self, because you're bubbly and you're engaging and you're in there all the time,
Oh yeah, no worries. Definitely fall right into the category. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thanks for, doing round two. I really felt after the last time we did this that I didn't want to waste any time in kind of getting onto round two. And I really think it provides a good degree of continuity for people that are, kind of tuning in and wondering, like, what is this process really about?
Yeah.
Not that you're doing it perfectly or better than anybody else, but as I pointed out the last time, your 2020 hindsight and kind of using that to, use it as a kind of a compass for yourself, moving forward and understanding, like the things that were wrong before, the scripts, all the elements that we talk about all the time. And instead of just having lived them and have it be a big mishmash behind me, to be able to look back into those things and use them forward.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I really appreciate every piece of the puzzle. And you said it, I think the other day in one of your dailies, it was, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for all those versions of myself and all of those stories and even tiniest pieces of the puzzle you can look back on and thread that back to where you are now. And I think looking at it within that perspective too has really gained me a grateful heart to be able to appreciate the everyday, the highs, the lows, like what I'm going through, and to really internalize, okay, like, why am I going through things? What am I learning through it? How am I going to find the grace within this hardship to really help me move forward? And because I can now look at it like that, I still will put pieces together, like something will happen in my life and I'm like, oh, well, that made so much sense 8 years ago, why that happened today. And reflection points, I think, are a huge part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a huge part of self-awareness, particularly, and that's why we kind of focus on forward journaling, for example, as an element. So that we can not just keep track of our lives and what has happened, but how are we going to move that forward? How are we going to incorporate that moving forward? How did I even, because we'll get tripped up over the same issues so easily. And even things like that, like, well, wait a minute, I just read my journal and 2 months ago I had the same type of an encounter. I can certainly conquer this. Now I know how to do it. Things like that. So, and it also helps, kind of build proper perspectives moving forward. I think too that where our perspectives obviously were broken in the past, how we perceive things. Are we on yet, Vanessa, by the way? Okay. I think we had a little shutdown. We got back on. Good news is we just keep going and record it anyway, so people can watch it later.
Cool.
So, and Kay, you and I talked last week or so about some elements that I want to kind of lead us into today when you start telling your part two of your story and some of the stuff that we didn't get to last time. Number one was really about becoming the genuine self, along the way. And I mentioned earlier, like, not, kind of living in tolerable recovery anymore, like just putting up with the things that I've done before stems from not knowing our value, for example. Like, I don't think I'm worth anything more than that, so I'll settle for this, stuff like that. So becoming the genuine self is huge. It's foundational, of course, because if we don't know who that is, which is our first purpose, then we can't discover our why. It'd be a hard time to even discover our gifts because we'll disqualify ourselves, for example.
Oh, yeah.
This is really good. This is going to be really good today. You're going to, these lead-ins are just so chock full of potential, and you're going to fill in all these blanks in your experience. Secondly, it was relationships, personal and professional, and discerning your perspectives in them. Like we just mentioned, perspectives and perceptions. By the way, those are 3 key words: perceptions, perspectives, and expectations.
Mm-hmm.
They all tie together.
Yes.
You have broken perspectives on things, or perceptions rather. Your perspective on things moving forward is going to be warped, and then your expectations are going to be off too. Those 3 words can change your life if you'll pay attention to them. I see Vanessa's jotting down notes, or she's doing something over there. Third,
putting it in the comments.
Good. Number 3 was leadership realities. You know, and you know, I've said this many, many times and written it many, many times. Is like everybody's really called to be a leader, one way or another, in their community, whether it's their neighborhood. In this particular case, our community is the business, for example, and so we're all called to be leaders in the business. We're not talking about levels of leadership in terms of official, but we're to be a leader in our own lives. We're to be a leader in our homes. If you can't lead your own life, then you can't lead anybody else. It's like you can't, if you don't love yourself enough, you can't love other people either. You know, so that reality is in there. I love this one, and you're going to do a daily for me pretty soon, I hope. Is who's writing your current narrative?
Yes.
I love that one. And then we talked about there are other elements, if you will, that are the actual kind of cement or the glue that holds all of these pieces together. Like what stuff? You know, now there's tons of stuff in terms of the process, but we focused on a few things. One of them is like, you know, your God reality. What does that look like for you? Everybody's experience with that is different, of course. But nevertheless, it's vital to have a spiritual component in our lives. Temperament, which of course is the first step in the process, really. For example, in your case, you're a sanguine, like just right out of the gate. Like if you didn't know that you have a sanguine swing from dependent to independent, you could think you're bipolar and be going down a road that just leads you to craziness.
Oh yeah, not pretty.
So important to know the temperament, to know the weaknesses, the strengths, forgiveness and releasing judgments, as we mentioned earlier as well. They're huge, because if you don't deal with them, you're never going to have a healthy perspective on yourself. Yeah. And so you can never be that genuine self. How are you going to build this new, not a wall to keep people out, but let's call it a foundation, not a wall. We used to have walls, we're tearing them down and we're building a foundation instead. And then lastly, is responsibility, taking responsibility and discerning your choices. Okay. Yes. And incorporating all of these disciplines in your daily life, which are elements of the process in action, if you will. And again, you know, your 2020 hindsight and how you've described this in the last one, how you're going to do here today. I'm really hoping that people can kind of sink their teeth into this and go like, oh, wow, that's what this looks like. That's how you can do this. And nobody's saying, again, that you're doing it perfectly or better than anybody else. You know, nobody's arrived. I certainly haven't.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, so let's get started. So do you want to start with that temperament aspect?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it took me a long time to realize how, you know, I was so influenced by proximity around me, you know, and being a sanguine in every category. That's a very big part of my life is who I am around. I'm influenced by. It's like you are who you associate with to the millionth degree. So when I was younger and I didn't know who I was from a hole in the wall, just very talented, I guess you could say, but, you know, internally very much struggling. There was always certain perceptions of me that, you know, the confidence and the talent, I guess, put me in a place where I did know who I was and I was going to keep going no matter what. And I did hit a wall where, because I didn't have a clear perspective on where I was going and how to heal, I made choices that then implemented me into the wrong proximity, which then had me very much influenced by, you know, the wrong people, toxic areas. That's when I left the business, is I was really sucked into areas that were not serving me at all. And because I was so self-conscious and unaware of what purpose even was, you know, I couldn't look years ahead and know who I was or how to lead, which made me very, I just lacked so much confidence in being able to, like you said, lead other people, because I'd had no idea how to lead myself and make decisions in the area of long-term thinking. And that's because I had no pocket of faith at all. every choice I made was spontaneous in the area of fear, and to temporarily make me feel good in the moment, which is why when I was younger, I was very self-serving in my efforts, and everything was the imposter taking over and painting this show for everyone. Because, being a sanguine, it's very easy to, perform and be certain ways. And I really had to find myself over the last 10 years to where I am now to like really dig into the deepest, hardest, darkest places of myself to understand that I needed to break chains and open up pockets for myself. And once I started really breaking chains, once I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired and just struggling and very unhealthy, toxic, overweight, no purpose, bored, swirling, swinging, I started releasing. And for the first time in my life, I was allowing space for what I believe, in my opinion, God to pour light into those areas now and start to heal me. But I never gave that room. I never gave that room. It was always, I was always distracted by something or, something fun to do or, like something toxic, to numb me. And, it came to a point where I think people, can understand that sometimes you get so low that you have no choice but to start climbing high. And then really what happened is I was deep into years of not being in the business. And then whenever I was struggling, I would go back to what I was taught, by the people who really gave me any type of purpose and, decided.
Let me throw something in, Kate, real quick, if you don't mind. It just came to mind. I mean, I worked with the homeless in New York City for like 27 years. And, what you just said, like if we say things like, oh, I don't know my purpose, it appears like that's something I have to fix.
Mm.
So I have to find my purpose. And it was the same thing with the people on the streets. Since they're homeless, they so many times in our encounters with people and in talking with them one-on-one, once you start talking to them, you find out like what's going on in their lives. And they say, well, if I just had a job and a place to stay, I would be okay. And see, because the presenting problem is I'm homeless and I don't have a job. So it seems like, well, I'll be okay if I have a job and I get a place to stay, but they've already had jobs and places to stay and they weren't okay then. So hello, we have to work on other areas. And I think it's the same thing here. Like when you said that, it's like, well, this elusive purpose. And then somebody comes along well-intending and saying, what's your purpose? Do you know what your purpose in life is? And you go, oh, gee whiz, I don't. I got to set out to figure out what my purpose is instead of figuring out who I am.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's such an internal struggle, I feel, for a while until you can really see it. It took me a while to understand that my everyday purpose is constructing my inner self and my relationship, just, outwardly into, the spirit and other areas where for such a long time, I thought that I had something to prove or a title to gain. And so, sometimes I still struggle with like task orientation disease and having to get better and do better. And then because of the, the process and things I've learned, I can bring myself back with the toolbox I have, accumulated over time and put myself back into an arena and say, wait, let's look at this now with a newfound perspective you have gained from all of this experience you've had. And it's been so vital for my growth to be able to, go back, like not knowing that I'm never going to be perfect in these areas, but to be able to gain perspectives from where I once was and, connect those pieces, so that's like that newfound awareness for me is like, oh, my everyday purpose is genuinely just becoming the best version of self. And that really being a sanguine, I was really wrapped up in being attached to literally everything you could think of. I mean, like back to when I was a kid, I would get so attached to my teachers, like all of these things, like can't let go. You feel something in me, and I guess I had to learn that having no attachment was gaining me the most freedom I've ever experienced, in a way where, I was always searching for like the ultimate high, or like, trying to find the best area to get the biggest applause. And kind of when I decided to release all of that and accept also those lows as, that same arena, it helps me relax and be fruitful in my everyday pursuit of actually growing, and less performing, more growing.
And
And
stopping striving,
Hmm?
stopping striving,
Yeah.
becoming unself-conscious.
Yes.
What a wonderful place that is.
It's an everyday journey. I'll tell you that.
Mhm.
And I think everyone has something about themselves they'd like to change. And, for me, growing up, I had a lot of like body image issues. And, I still struggle with a lot of that today. And being a healthier now, and, getting into a healthier spot of my life, I can look back into areas where I wasn't as healthy, and I can use my toolbox to say, you're healthy and high performing, but your worth doesn't come out of the way you look, because look, you're still growing, and you're still internally needing to heal. So any part of you that you're trying to change or shift or mold, that's not the way you perfectly need it, is not going to fill that spot that's trying to be filled, and I've
Mhm.
had to learn a lot of just really letting go of, other people's perceptions of me. And I work on that every day. And also, like, when you're, like in leadership within a community, those are things that you genuinely need to let go of. And you gave me a book, Bill, called Brokenness from Community. And it helped me really understand that, without it all, can I be happy? Like you said, like, what is actually serving these points of me that give me peace of mind? And can I be happy at the highest of the high and the lowest of the low, knowing that it's bringing me to where I need to be?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then having, the right, again, perspective of where you're headed, really getting a beat on that. And in life, we're so conditioned, and you're a sanguine, like you said, of course, and sanguines can be chameleons, so they're going to sit on a branch and they're going to become that color, to adapt to whatever is going on so I can be accepted, and so on and so on and so on. So again, like, kind of wrapping that temperament aspect into what you just shared. And then when you say chained, like that's one of the things that it's so elementary, is continuing to operate out of the negative aspects of our temperament because we're unaware of them, keeps us chained to the old behaviors, to the old scripts, to the old images. What I was saying earlier about our perspectives and perceptions, they form and shape so many different things, and especially the expectations of yourself moving forward. I can't do that, and that's where disqualification comes in so often.
Yeah.
Because of these broken perspectives and so on, and they all need to be transformed, by the renewing of our mind, right? So the process helps us to do that on all these different levels. So let's talk a little bit about like some of those scripts that that were kind of written that supported this wrong approach to your life moving forward that had to be broken.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I was, like a heavier kid, and wasn't like the most athletic person in my family. And athletics was like a big thing in my family. So on both sides of my family, I think like there was a lot of like societal like ways you were supposed to be, have like some of my grandparents being like foreign from different countries. Like it's just a certain perspective that like you should be a certain way and look a certain way. And when you're growing up and you don't look like everyone else. You're the theater kid, you do karate, and everyone else is like these high-end athletes. And I kicked butt in karate, but it wasn't the same. It was for some reason like an offbeat perspective on like just I wasn't that kid. And I guess being a sanguine and always wanting to be accepted, I really then focused on the areas I wasn't accepted, and I made those areas worse.
Mm.
So when I was younger, I would just excessively eat and, not really care about being healthy, and just more of the funny person, and, just kind of like made that part of who I was, until I realized that it was making me also miserable to lean into my toxic traits. And, I think that stemmed like really far into my life, really until I started doing this process with you guys. I um, would like self-consciously just look in the mirror for a really long time and be really unhappy with what I saw on the other side. And I think it's really easy for people to think that like everything is perfect. Like also like when you have a temperament that, where you are bubbly and outgoing, and you can get a lot done, it's easy to look at something and think like everything's really just free flowing. And but I feel like everyone has insecurities before they get on stage, or before they're about to really share that. Like at first, it was before I really started working on myself internally in these areas, I was more focused on those things. And then I recognized that, my healing is ultimately my purpose, so that I can be whole for other people. And that's something that Sia has really taught me, Sia Bowler, that, she may not be comfortable all the time with sharing because of her temperament, but she knows that her healing and her perspectives and her growth and her lessons are, to steward, the other people in her life, and really our purpose, to be interconnected in those areas. And I just needed to understand more about, the want to respect myself and be healthy and high performing in a way where I wasn't focused on, being perfect, but knowing that never ending process was going to continue to strengthen me into the areas I am now, to gain me peace, and then being upset with who I was. I also fell into relationships with people where I could fix them, so I didn't have to focus on my own stuff, because I had so many things going on in here, that I often fell into places where I was the more dominant one, or the one who can be in more control, or the fixer, or the doer, so that I didn't have to reflect on anything I was doing, which put me in a lot of stressful, unaligned situations as well, when you can really care for someone, but, not really align in any other area. So I had to set really strong boundaries for myself in my life. I needed to find the peace in being with myself, so that I could actually like hear myself and figure out who I am without the influence of someone else's relationship filling me with value. And literally just learn how to find value with nothing. Like, I am who I am. And Kiel works on that with me probably every time we sit down. It's, if, you didn't have the business or this or that, like, would you still love you? And that's why every day I have to focus on these things, because I'm strengthening these muscles within myself that for the last like 27 years before I really dove into this, I struggled with. And it takes a while to reprogram your mind. So I'm dedicated, and I've really wiped out distractions, and I like being with myself and internalizing, because I could really hear what I need to hear. And I was for so long distracting myself with different communities, situations, relationships. So I never had to really look at myself in the mirror. And that
Yeah, and
was,
the other thing, Kay, too, is when you that piece that I sent you that you said you read it like 50 times, really speaks into that. And it's like you find a false peace when we engage in these activities of like thinking I'm in control. I've gotten approval from this, feel good about that. And something that I'm trying to remember. I can't even find where I found that. I have it somewhere. I have zillions of things like that. That's the problem. They're all over the place. But that one there, I said, even when we find ourselves in control, which is like one of the pinnacles of feeling accomplished or safe or whatever, we're still dead and empty because they're nothing but band-aids. They're just nothing but, they're false comforts. I used to call them all false comforts all the time. And so we gravitate towards those because they're the only things that we know how to do until like you just said, is like you start to take the time to investigate, okay, who am I? That's the road less traveled. That's the place that we never really wanted to go. Nobody ever told us that we should do that. Life itself, especially in the United States, is just kind of built around, self and and our culture particularly and all that. So we're fighting an uphill battle all the time. We're going against the grain to the simplest things that have always existed. They've always been there and they always will be there. Kind of moving in. And it's really the bottom line is, when we dump the toxic behavior patterns that we got ourselves involved in and the scripts that supported them and all of that, you start moving into this place of this revelation of your value. And I think that's where we just left off what you were saying is that, once you start into that place, I mean, we're kind of timid when we walk in there because we're not used to that and we're still insecure, of course, and so, but it starts to awaken the genuineness of who we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's really gained me confidence to, I guess you could say, use my temperament in the beautiful way it could be used, because like and just really leaning into areas of like what's healthy and what I can bring to value, so like shifting into an area of just like genuinely not being fearful to share who I am. And it's funny because I feel like when I was fearful to share who I really was, I was painting this entire story of who I wasn't that was much more intricate and interesting in all of these areas. And now I can talk genuinely about what I believe and what I love and in a very transparent way. And that's against the norm. It's against the norm to talk about, like leading with love and working, deeply on your scripts and transforming, through the dirt. And so easy to just say things are positive and happy and you can manifest whatever you want all the time. But are you putting the action behind what you're manifesting and really, putting that action from the process into your life?
And before, when we started this off, I was just reflecting back on those points that we brought out, like becoming the genuine self. How does that filter over relationships and business and in your, personal life as well? We'll move more into little leadership realities, but what we just talked about is like, who's writing your current narrative? Well, of course it's you, but it's, when we write stuff up, we gather information and then we decipher it and we filter it out and then we put it down so that it can be intelligently absorbed by somebody else, It's me first though. And so when you were writing that broken narrative, like the rest of us, and these elements that you're talking about here is really about like, wait a minute, I'm starting to see things with that different perspective and perception of who I am, who other people are to me, how much influence should they have on me, and so on and so forth. So I can write a new narrative that I'm involved in on a daily basis that keeps me moving forward in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just always being prepared for what's next in a way, like being in leadership, and diving into that area. It's like what I've realized is you're always being prepared for what's not yet to come. And so every part of my story has somewhat divinely constructed me into exactly who I need to be, not only for myself, but the other person I'm looking at. But I needed to go through a lot of the areas and break a lot of the chains I did to understand the perspective of the narrative I'm writing now. So like if I was presented the same situations I am now a few years ago, I tell you, I wouldn't be able to handle it because I had my blinders on, I had my hood up, and I wasn't willing to listen to anyone or follow anything that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do right in that moment. And now instead of, self-sustainability, I think, long term, like, how is this, this may not serve me now, but in some way it's going to reflect, in the future or in the next minute. And, making those choices to really stay in a healthy area isn't always easy, but I do believe it's that stretch that gives you the area to even gain that awareness, or that question that you start to form in your mind, is in the stretch. If you stay here in this complacent place, you'll never experience what it is to get onto the other side of the stretch. And so now you're actually starting to download and experience things that you wouldn't have yet seen. So you're moving through this path of awareness here. And Francis calls it accelerated implementation. So it's like you're proving to yourself that you can just do one more than you already did, or stretch yourself just a little further than you thought you ever could. And it releases this strength inside of you, where now you understand that, just the further you go, the more you'll achieve and see. And it almost becomes like a game of, well, what yet have I not discovered? And that's why now, when negative things or just like life lessons come my way, I more or less try to say, like, okay, what is this teaching me? And like, and it's a battle every day, but I've set these non-negotiables in my life to, when I feel that point of pressure on my chest, anxiety taking over me, instead of going into curl up mode, I go into the default mode of, why am I feeling this and what am I being prepared for next? And leaning into that is when I've discovered my biggest gems, or my like heightened awareness in certain areas but that was me proving to myself, like, oh, wow, okay, like, so these tools actually work, like making these choices to experience, taste, feel these things myself, which ultimately, pushes you further into it anyway. It's all a wheel,
I want to read just one of the things that you wrote in your notes here that we're kind of following here. And you wrote, the process of advancing as a leader in a community of impact within glass walls, and how that's healthy pressure. That is so good. So good. Yes. And then you said how that has protected me still from unhealthy choices that I still sometimes think about. And I think it's important to point out to people that, in this process of transformation and change, over time we mature, of course, and things that used to be, plaguing us don't anymore, and we're not so easily beset with them. But we're always still there, and those unhealthy choices many times can be very tempting to us, to fall back into. So what you just quoted there was like such a great example of that self-perception and that self-understanding. Like, the reason I say that is because if you fall into these things, even to get tempted, I used to tell people, to get tempted is not a sin. To be tempted is not a sin. To be tempted to make a mistake is not doing something wrong or bad. Everybody's going to experience that. But like you said, it's what's that going to do for me moving forward, so that I can utilize that in putting another foundation stone in my foundation as I'm building it. And again, that's where I think your 2020 hindsight is such a great example. Everything that you're saying, by the way, just to encourage you, you're doing that like right now. Vanessa, can you see that? Can you see how she's constantly drawing from her history?
I'm like mind blown. I have like pages of notes. You guys are like two like philosophers, and I'm just sitting here. It's all so heavy, and it's just so. I wish you could go back in time and like pat the younger self like on the back and be like, it's all gonna be worth it, like all these things, because it's all so evident now that like you really did have to go through all that, because those experiences are what you're talking about now that are touching me. Like, I'm getting emotional. Like, so good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So anyway, just keeping to move forward. I love that accelerated implementation, by the way. I put that over on the chat screen.
Oh, yeah. Francis gives us the best gem.
Yes, absolutely.
Fire, always fire.
I guess another point too is when I wasn't in the correct proximity, you always like subconsciously, I think, like, know where you belong. And I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn person. So, like actually coming back to an area where people grow and are so brilliant within their own self-growth, like that was huge for me. Like I don't know if I would have been pulled back as fiercely as I was if it wasn't for me recognizing that the people now surrounding me were fiercely developing within themselves. And like, that's where I say like proximity influences so many parts of me, but I had to understand that that's being in an ecosystem is healthy. And I didn't want to be independent anymore, but I needed to be in an area of healthy proximity and sit there and stay there and not dwell on the areas that were left behind, but move forward into the areas that were meant. And like you said, Bill, like the business kind of, it does shield me in a way where I really do value like the healing of myself is the healing of others, and that being a genuine purpose. So when I want to do something unhealthy or impulsive, I bring myself back to the area of one, self-love, and then two, like how that would implement outwardly into the responsibility you gain over time when you start walking in these areas, which is big for me because of the examples I have. And not that I've had to learn how that doesn't define me, but will excel my drive to become better. So even being an example for someone is a gift and doesn't have to be a stress, but a grace to me in just continuing to move forward.
Well, and it's not a performance issue. It's not like you're performing for other people or, putting on a demonstration of, hey, this is me. This is how you live your life. This is how you do it. It's just living your life differently, and other people get to see it. They get to partake of it. And that's what community is really all about. We make way for ourselves and we make way for other people by living genuinely in the context of a community. It should be, you use the term ecosystem, and it sparked something in me. Sorry, I dropped my phone. It sparked something in me. I just did a daily on it, which I had actually done before, on ethos. Ethos is it's the bloodstream of a culture within a community. Yeah. What I mean? It's what pulses through that, and so that's what you're really, when we do everything that you've set up until now, and in the process of transformation and all that, you're finding yourself in the flow of that.
Yeah.
And that's such a huge part of understanding like these realities. And it's not an over spiritualized concept, it's real.
Yeah.
And Tony and I have talked about this, and Francis as well, many times in terms of leadership development. A lot of times people don't even equate things like that in leadership development. Like they say, what's your ethos? It sounds like you're like an old hippie talking about like, what's your ethos, man? Like, what's your sign? Like, no, like it's the lifeblood of this thing. Yeah. So that being said, and kind of moving along, we mentioned this earlier too, like one of the elements is our God reality and the spiritual aspects that I believe, of course, kind of they contain all of this, if you will. There's so many different pieces, moving parts in it, but it's this consciousness of God in one's life.
Yeah.
I heard it preached a long time ago, the message was called creating a consciousness for God. I think that's what we do here too, is we create a consciousness for God. It's not about religion. Of course, it's not about going to church and being a nice person and opening doors for people. It's about a consciousness for God within yourself, starting there, and having that rooted and grounded and founded inside of yourself. So maybe you can kind of move into that area now for you.
Yeah. My journey, like just in my spiritual pocket, has been super interesting. It's, been very intriguing for me to always figure out like answers. Like I want answers, which has been, I think, also funny enough, the hardest part of my journey, because that is totally not the point of a spiritual pocket, is to have all the answers. But that's what I was always seeking, which is why I was always in a place where I didn't feel connected. I was trying to be I was just trying to study these things rather than be discipled in an area where I could really understand the movement of, what was happening through me and around me. And I was introduced, to, God early in my life, did all the things that everyone around the block does. You go to religion with all your friends, you do communion and all these things, and really understand nothing. And, I always knew I had love in that area. It was always very easy for me to simply accept and never really had any doubt about, but there was always this disconnect of actually understanding like what God's love was. Like it was kind of just said and not felt. Um, and I was put through a lot of experiences in my life where I was pushed to really explore those areas. When I got into the business, I think I spoke briefly on this last time, but my cousin passed away from cancer when I was young, and he was young. So it was an interesting part of my life where I was just seeking like, what is next, or what is this journey? And so I had just a lot of times where I've explored a lot. I had a lot of times where I disconnected completely from any part of a spiritual connection or walk. And those were the hardest parts of my life, I'd say, is when I would totally leave it behind and and just weigh everything on my own shoulders. That's where my anxiety was at the highest. That's when I was the most toxic. That's when I ignored being led and, by anyone in my life. And I think I was just such in a scarcity, fearful mindset, that it was easier for me to go seek answers from people, like go get cards read or go, to just like areas that were going to like really serve me in that moment. Like, oh, okay. Like, don't have to worry about this anymore. Like I can, go out with my friends now and it's fine. Like, I know what's going to happen in 3 months from now, like predicting my whole story forward, which kept me in so much fear, and anxiety and scarcity, always wondering what was next, never having faith in myself, or God. And so I've gone through a lot of exploration. I'm someone who really loves to study and dig and find what these pieces are. And so I drew a line in the sand, and I decided I really wanted to. I saw a piece of mind point in other people that I couldn't piece together within myself. And then I always had people also telling me that they saw that certain light inside of me. So it was always confusing. I always felt like I wasn't worthy enough to really, I feel, connect with any spiritual part of me. And, it was really me, one, coming into a community where I could feel safe. And then two, actually surrounding myself with really great education and knowledge. I hear an echo of
digital echo, no problem.
But like my faith is interesting because someone who deals with really bad anxiety like myself, I really had no idea how to get rid of it. Before opening up my eyes, I would be crippled by anxiety, like an overwhelming pressure on my chest, just cementing me into this stagnant place of where I didn't want to be. And I think that's the ultimate area of the enemy or negative energy or whatever anyone wants to call it. There are forces that really hold you down. And I needed to make a choice. I had so many chains surrounding me. I had so many areas that I wasn't willing to let go of. I was still looking back into the past. I was still wondering if I should go this way, that way. And I had to release all of that to make room to figure out what was new and what was healthy for me. Like my journey goes far and deep in that way. But what I've really discovered is no one could ever motivate me enough or inspire me enough to see clearly how these perspectives have changed my life. I needed to really educate myself and dive into that area of the process too, to like discover like what God's love was. Like I'm all about love. So I was like, if you're telling me that this is all wrapped up in love, like I want to figure out how and why, and like, what this internal struggle is inside of me when someone looks at me and says like, wow, like there's something about you. And I don't know how to answer a question or even understand myself. And Bill, you've sent me a lot of things that have helped me recognize that, like there is a certain there's a certain joyful pocket that you gain when you really lean into this area of your life, and you could start understanding like where that light comes from. It's like it's almost if like everyone would say to me like, wow, like you're so great, you're so good, like you have this energy, and I'd never wanted to claim it, as if I always knew that it was something bigger than self, and so then discovering that helps me then lean more into it and accept it as more of a gift, and being able to be grateful for what I've been given rather than righteous for who I am.
Or striving to get into that place, because that place already exists. I think that's such a key to this, is surrendering.
Yeah.
Like all of that, in terms of like trying to figure it out or trying to be good enough to get in there and, to have that bestowed upon me, or, we can't claim anything of having earned that, for example.
Yeah.
And so instead of disqualifying ourselves, we throw all that overboard and just say, you know what, that place has to exist. I want to move in there. And I always say it like this: is it's very difficult to, and I shared this with you the other day, in the refiner's fire thing that I gave you, about trying to get to the center from the circumference is very difficult. You have to start in the center and work your way out from there, and your life just works out from that direction. So it's always hard to get in from the outside.
Yeah.
So once you're in, it doesn't mean that, oh, it's like, oh, wow, I'm in, everything's great. But now you have again, those perspectives and perceptions are changed, just on the very fact that, wait a minute, I don't have to earn this. I don't have to work my way in. I don't have to be perfect. And it actually frees you up to be able to just move around in that territory.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. Like when I was trying to get from the outside to the center, my life honestly was very boring and complacent and redundant. And that's why I fell into cycles of being very toxic. And then, because you're fearful to go deep, right? And then you go deep and you're like, wow, there's so many interesting pieces to this puzzle. How could I ever be bored? I have so much to discover and dive into. And I've learned to be excited about that, because I've let myself experience, that growth, and the proximity also helps you see the growth in other people, which, and subconsciously just being humans, gives you the permission to actually try and discover and taste that yourself, like knowing that everyone's come from some place where they've had to grow into who they are now. But when I didn't have the community, the process, the structure, the mentorship, the list of tools in my toolbox, I was not the Kayla McKenna I am right now. I was being prepared to be who I am now, because it made me get to my root. But it was really that, all right, I'm going to make this choice to get to the next level of self. Because I honestly, I could have come into the business and just done me, right? Like done my talent, but I only would have gotten so far. Like people don't want to follow someone, who's just talking the talk, like it's about really extending that light, and that's really what I've learned is, I can get excited about my healing, because I know that I'm going to be walking in that light. And, so it's really about that for me. It's like, I don't really know what's going to happen in my life, but I know if I make every decision that's going to really serve me and, like heal what's going on around me and in the world, then I'm going to be guided in the right way that's meant. And every part of that's a stepping stone,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's about finding, again, in that center place that we're talking about, there's peace there. There's a contentment. There's a less striving. And especially as a sanguine, as we've mentioned several times today, sanguines want to be approved of and accepted and loved and liked and all that. And that'll always be there as a sanguine, but you don't have the same let's call it over neediness in that area, because I already know who I am. So instead of you mentioned this earlier too, instead of filling up that void, with people's approval and busyness or whatever it is that you're filling up that hole with, then, you're free.
Yeah.
You're free to be, like I like to call it. And if I'm free to be, then I can be free to become as well. And that's where the paradigm shift kind of comes in, I believe, is where, that perspective of this entire journey just shifts over to like, oh, I thought it was like I had to work real hard. And when we say do the work, it's like, what does doing the work mean? It means everything we've talked about today. And so much of that is release, right? It's not having all the answers, trying to get all the answers, trying to fix everything so you're perfect or any of those things. Those are always take you down the road like a dead end street and back to cycling.
Yeah.
And tolerable recovery, like we just get a little bit better. And I always refer to what Julie Signorelli said is, process with progress allows you to love every version of yourself.
Yeah.
So if you can love every version of yourself as you're in the process and just keep moving forward, is everything you said, being a part of community, realizing I don't have to impress or dazzle anybody. I'm just me. I can come alongside of you. You can come alongside of me, drop all the pretense and process and all those things. Then that's how you become.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just become. And it sounds so simplistic when you put it that way. There's a lot of elements to that. And there's a lot of certainly very difficult challenges with that because we have to let go of so many false comforts and things that we've relied upon, the survival techniques. That's a whole nother topic. The things that used to or protect us don't protect us anymore. They hurt us. So those are the old scripts that are telling us, oh no, you can't do that. You have to do this. It's like, no, I don't have to do that anymore. Thank you for protecting me back then, but I don't need that wall up at this point. What I need to do is take that wall down, and be vulnerable, like vulnerability, like, oh, vulnerability scares me. I don't want to be open. I don't want people to know, and hiding, covering up, lying. It just goes on and on. And so now we're free to not have to do those things. And it's like you can breathe for the first time in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I say now, I'm like, put it all out on the table. You'll feel so much better, And there's a quote in the book you gave me that it says, like, healing begins here in myself. Wholeness and unity begin inside of myself. If I'm growing towards wholeness, then I'll be an agent of wholeness. So it's like, like you say, like a healer, if you're broken, you break people. If you're healing, you'll heal people. And it's just that process of becoming. And a big part of that, I know we were talking about like the area of forgiveness too. I really needed to just release a lot of things that were personally holding me back, because when I really started understanding that healing was within myself and letting go of attachment was going to gain me that freedom. Not only did forgiveness teach me that it was helping me become whole and see things clearly, but it also just helped me stand taller in every situation in my life, as in what you're dealing with really has nothing to do with me. And, I'm going to stand taller in who I am so that you can possibly stand taller in who you are, and never assuming or creating judgment at one point, because at one point you recognize that you are a complete reflection of the person staring right back in front of you, and everything you're dealing with, they have once dealt with, and everything you're dealing with, they once will too. And once you understand that you're completely one with everyone around you, it becomes very easy to release judgment and understand that it doesn't matter someone's title, age, skin color, anything. Everyone is dealing with life and constructing who they are and what that path looks like. So, I've really learned grace within my pocket of faith, because faith has helped me release judgment and find freedom. And then, just provided me this whole area of grace when I walk in my everyday life, to not be offended or take things personally, and be able to like wash someone's feet, even if they've done me wrong, and let that be the purposeful example of my testimony as I walk through life is, like, no, really matter what's in front of me or what's going on, I'm going to paint the picture that I'm meant to paint, and that will, grow the fruit on the tree for other people to get nourished, even if they can't do it themselves.
That's right. And producing fruit is not for us alone. It's for the people who are going to be hanging around in the orchard with us,
Yeah.
and eating that fruit. We're going to have to start wrapping up. what's one final word before I give some directives after this that you want to share with some folks today? Because everybody, again, like I started off sharing, okay, in the beginning, is I think the process can be intimidating to a lot of people, certainly scary to even think about getting into for multitudes of reasons. And it takes some degree of boldness and courage to be able to do that. What do you have to say to folks who are hesitating?
I'd say, jump in the pool because you don't know, you don't understand how easy it is to, I guess, swim until you're actually in the water. And what I mean is like, obviously growing and healing isn't easy, but you're in a current that's going to help you move forward. Like I used to live by a river and I used to go kayaking a lot. And I at first was really nervous to get in because I thought I wasn't going to have the stamina to really go along the way. But then I recognized that the river was going to guide me, in the direction of the current. And I knew I wanted to follow what I saw, where I saw the river was bringing other people, like the process and the peace and the peace of mind. I say it all the time. Like, I don't see peace of mind in other people that I see here in this community. And that is the biggest blessing I think we ever could have received, is the area of peace of mind so that we can fruitfully perform what we need to do in this life and be the stepping stones and the foundation that we're really trying to build within the business, So it's, watch, the way the current is moving and, how that is actually serving people and helping people move forward, and have trust and faith in an area that you've been given, to really be able to see. I needed to learn to trust myself so that I can trust what was in front of me. The only reason why someone lacks trust is because, they haven't a hard time trusting themselves, but it really is about releasing that area and knowing it's out of your hands. So you might as well gain peace of mind in this process, as you're figuring out all parts of your life.
Yeah, I like what you said. Watch how the current is moving.
Yeah.
And it kind of, what I mentioned earlier about ethos, that kind of ties into that. It's moving, and instead of trying to compare myself to it, analyze it, judge it, fear it. And I sent you some music last time too about jumping. We can stand on the side of the river and decide and decide and decide and decide,
Yep.
And sometimes you just got to jump, and learn how to breathe underwater, swim underwater, do all this stuff underwater, because the current's moving, it's moving all the time. And when we're in it, to finish up that thought, that the community that we're developing ought to be a safe place for everyone, to be able to become who they are genuinely and not have to fear judgment and so on. And the very fact that we're in community is going to be in that book, the Brokenness to Community, it's in there somewhere. Community is it's destructive while it's constructive, because you have to deconstruct a lot of stuff in you, and everybody's doing it at the same time. This is where the iron sharpening iron concept would come from. And it's like, so while we're rubbing against one another in community, we don't need to get offended and judgmental. We need to go like, oh, that this is supposed to be happening for my benefit, so that we can benefit one another and learn how to love one another and let love cover a multitude of sins, kind of a thing, where it just doesn't, we don't get so easily offended, so on and so on.
Yeah.
So I got to wrap things up, but thank you so much, Kay, for today. This was just fantastic.
No, thank you. I'm so honored to share any platform with you, Bill.
Yeah, and hopefully there'll be a lot of people who can watch this later and share with the friends and so on. But as usual, I'm gonna, like Vanessa always says, and she had to run off for an emergency. Keep her in your prayers, everyone, by the way, since something came up. So just pray for her and her family. The process is available on Amazon, of course, and Audible. And if you want a Spanish version, you can just email me and we can take care of it that way. This will outline the process. I think it's so important for us to know, like, what is the process and what are the elements of the process, so we can stay in it. The new book is going to be even better. It's a guided journal and devotional that's going to last a year for you. So I can't wait, but it's just taken a long time to do it. And then the book of the week is called The Flight from Intimacy by the Weinholds. This is the flip side of codependency, which is counterdependency, meaning No, I don't think I need anybody. I can just, it's probably hard to read for everybody to see this, but there you go. It's probably a little better.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. They're really powerful writers. It's heavy duty books. This is like college textbook material.
I'm
But
reading the codependency one right now.
oh, are you? Good. So this is the sister. This is the companion for it.
Cool.
So grab that one next. And I want to remind everybody to tell your friends to subscribe to the EIS app, because this is the only way to see these awesome broadcasts and receive the daily journal now in audio. And we fixed that little glitch. So when you put your phone down on the car seat when you're driving and you're listening to the daily, it won't turn off now. It's just going to keep on going. I love that. You got to have that happening for sure. And Kay, I know you partake in those, and I hope it benefits so many other people to hear these things. And I know I love stuff like that myself.
Oh yeah.
I love the little bite-sized chunks that I can just kind of plug in and kind of run with during the day.
Yeah, they really are great. I was actually commenting on the timing of them the other day. I'm like, they're short and sweet and juicy and effective. Get them in. Yeah.
Little snacks. Okay.
Yeah.
So connect with friends that way too. And you gave me a suggestion earlier. So we're constantly working on how we can enhance the usability of the app to be able, and you've suggested being able to comment on the dailies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we fixed that, at least on the post itself, but not on the audio portion. And then maybe we can even fix that too. Don't know about that for sure. But everybody who's listening today, try to do your best to connect. We want to hear from you. I want to hear what your suggestions are. I want to hear what your suggestions for topics on those dailies would be, even for these lives. Like, what are you interested? What we want to be able to provide that value for everyone. And we are this community that we just talked about. So we want to make it rich. We want to make it full. We want to make it safe. We want to make it inviting for people to step into and flow in that river. Then wasn't that nice the way that just kind of happened there?
It was. That was a nice flow.
So thank you again. And we'll let everybody know what's happening next week sometime during the week. And but for now, it's time to say goodbye. Thanks so much, Kay.
No problem. Thanks, guys. It was so nice. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah,
Talk
see you soon. Bye.
Bye.